Back in college, I had a college professor of mine take a look at the top 9 or so anime music videos that I created. After they watched them, they went and said that while the visuals were good and the storyline was particularly well done, one of the things they didn't like was the videos to them were violent. And I went and told them that I counted, and they were more non-violent videos than they were violent videos. And also, in the videos that were violent, the violence actually had a point in being there. It wasn't just something thrown in at random or as an afterthought. And what they told me was, well, that's because you are part of a different generation. You grew up watching violent TV and just what's going on in the news and everything else. And what's happened is, to you, thinking about violence is kind of like a fish thinking about water. That kind of stuck with me a little bit. And what happened is, as I went and studied feminism, racism, and social justice warriors, I've kind of noticed something happen a little bit over time. What's happened is, because I am usually exposed to so much stupidity and everything else and all, I'm beginning to go and get desensitized to the outrage. And this is what I'm starting to get at. I'm the exception to the rule. Most people do not go and sit and listen to this social drama and everything else that's going on. And so I'm a little bit unique in that I know a little bit more about it than the average Joe. As it becomes more and more common, what's going to happen is the average person, they're going to become desensitized to what's the feminist and racist and all these other people are saying. And what I mean by that is, everything you do is racist and everything you say is sexist. And there's just so much of it that people are going to get burned out. They're going to go and quit caring about it. It's going to be, yeah, I know, this is racist, that's sexist, and, you're offended because I think this, and you're also offended because I don't go and believe in this, and, this, that, and everything else, and you know what? It really doesn't matter. You're offended, or they're offended. So what? Why should I care about who is and who is not offended? At the end of the day, what's in it for me? All that I'm going to be doing is walking on eggshells around a bunch of hypersensitive people that are actually on the lookout to be offended. This is what people want to do. It's kind of like, oh no, air conditioners are sexist because women dress like they're going to go clubbing while men who usually go and have where the business standard is, khakis and a polo shirt, they're burning up, and so the air conditioner is going to be more at their suited temperature than the secretaries. Just some trivial crap that don't even matter, or some that would probably appear in The Onion, like a proposal to go and have an overpass, a woman's only overpass made because traffic is usually kept busy because of male commuters. This is something that would appear in The Onion, and yet this is actually real life. It's actually happening in real time. And just people getting so hypersensitive over every single thing, what's going to happen is people are going to go and reach a point where there's just no keeping up. There is nothing you can do. Yeah, everything you do and everything you say is going to be offensive, and there's no getting around it. But when you sit and think about it for a second, what were you expecting? I mean, people are different. They're not the same. They go and have their own likes, dislikes, and everything else. It's kind of like how some people can sit and watch NASCAR and, football and all this other stuff and have a great time. Me, I am not one of those people. And this is just small things, what people do for fun. This isn't stuff like I prefer to eat meat, and therefore I am offending vegetarians everywhere. It may not be the same thing, but it's understandable that I have no intention of becoming a vegetarian ever, and I'm not really going to be too open to what a vegetarian has to say. I'm going to listen to them just to humor them, but in what they're saying is true. I've already made it up in my mind that meat is just kind of tasty. Maybe not in big portions, but, a little bit every now and then, go for it. Anyway, the point is, I've already lost a couple of people already just by what I've went and said. And if you're one of those people who are like, oh, he's just one of those meat eaters, then fine, don't go and listen to my channel. I could care less. You are not my target audience, and I could go and do without you. In fact, tell you what, if I actually sat and worried about not offending people, do you know what would happen? Let me give you an example of what would happen if I actually went and uploaded a video that didn't offend anyone. This is what you would get. See? Was that entertaining? Was that interesting? Did that keep you glued to your seat? No, of course it didn't. It was dead silence. It was me saying nothing. Well, okay. If the only way I'm going to offend someone is not to do anything, okay, what good is it? We're giving up individuality so we do not go and offend a large group of people. The group is more important than the individual. That's the complete opposite of how things should be. If you cannot go and satisfy the individual person, you cannot satisfy everyone, every single last person there is. That's impossible. However, it is possible to satisfy enough individual people where those individuals become the majority. It is kind of like, you're playing a losing game. No matter what you're going to do, you're going to go and lose. So what you do instead is you go and try and minimize your loss. You get to keep the greatest portion possible. That's all we can do. Because unless we all decide to become robots, or unless we all decide to go and give up individuality and combine ourselves into some kind of hive mind, like, for example, the Borg from Star Trek or the Cybermen from Doctor Who. Those are about the only two ways we can get rid of individuality. And the thing of it is, if you give up being an individual where you got your own mind and your own reason and your own preferences and your own taste, if you have to give those things up, you have essentially sacrificed what it means to be human. And if you want to give up what it is to be human, frankly, I have no sympathy for you. If you want to go and live out in some kind of commune out in the middle of nowhere with like-minded individuals, by all means, go for it. But do not go and try and convert the rest of society. Most people do not want to be part of a hive mind. They want to go and have a clear separation from them and the person next to them. And also, for those who are offended about, what about this or there's, this injustice, saying, yes, I know. There's injustices everywhere. There's injustices towards straight white men, but apparently none of you want to hear it. Okay, well, if you don't want to hear an injustice towards a straight white man, then why would I care about an injustice towards someone who's black, female, or gay? It's the exact same logic. You can sit there and say, well, you're such a terrible person. Well, okay, you're equally terrible by your own reasons. Again, no matter how you look at it, we're both losing the argument. All that can be done is to satisfy as many people as possible. That's all there is. And unfortunately, when you go by a group collective, you're going to fail. Because the individual is a threat. And if you can attack the individual, then nobody has any rights, nobody has any freedoms, and they're all just replaceable cogs in a machine. This is why I'm saying that we need to quit being so offended. Because what's going to end up happening is that by everyone speaking about, oh, this offends me and everything else, well, what's going to happen? It's kind of like how I'm not really affected by violence that much because I'm so used to it. The average Joe is going to be so overexposed to all this offensive stuff, they're going to realize that, hey, guess what? Life is offensive. That's just the way it is. If you don't like life being offensive, your only option is to either go out on a deserted island by yourself or kill yourself. Those are your only two options, because I really do not see society wanting to take the path of communism or fascism unless they've been completely brainwashed and the government's literally holding a gun to their head telling them not to think otherwise. I mean, yeah, this is already going on with the people in China, where they're nothing more than a bunch of red Maoist ants. There's no individuality amongst the entire group of people, and that's why I would probably rather be shot than forced to live in such a society. Because the idea of giving up who I am as a person, I just don't want to put up with it. And if me being who I am offends someone, well, guess what? That's a small price to pay. I am not going to give up who I am just to make someone else happy for a very good reason. Because I know, deep in my own heart, no one else would be willing to do the same. I do not expect a person to do this. And if they were willing to do it, I'd tell them to stop and grow a spine. Still, the bottom line is, try not to be so offense-seeking. Quit looking for stuff to complain about. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to be offended. And what's going to happen is, because people get burned out on the small petty stuff, like using the word "too" is offensive to women now. You know, as in you're too small, or you're too fat, or you're too whatever. That's offensive now, a 3-letter word. Well, okay. We need to quit doing this. We need to go and quit being offended, because at the end of the day, what's going to end up happening is people are not going to care. They're going to be burned out on so much of the petty stuff that when the major important stuff arrives, they're just going to shrug their shoulders and be like, oh well, whatever. It's just, one more on top of the dog pile as it is. So if it's just one more on top of whatever, who's going to care? And really, as bad as it is, as much as I complain about people being offended, it's also just as bad to live in a world where no one cares if you're offended or not. And before someone says that I contradicted myself, let me put it like this. I'm trying not to offend the majority or my target audience. There's these people that I am talking to that are important. Anyone outside of that demographic, they're not worth it. They're not worth the time and effort. I will listen to what they have to say, but I will not, however, try and tailor it to them, because I'll be forced to sacrifice the content of my message. This is why I'm saying we need a little of both. It's kind of like, do you want to go and live in the middle of Death Valley, or would you want to live in Antarctica? And the real answer is neither. You want to live in a climate that's moderate, that's neither hot nor cold, but is basically warm. And no, that's not flip-flopping or whatever you want to go and call it. It's simply realizing that one extreme is as bad as the other extreme. And unfortunately, we're going to end up heading towards the opposite extreme. Which means those people who are saying they're so oppressed and got it so bad right now, believe me, if you're offended now when people actually are willing to bend over backwards to try to satisfy you, you're going to go and have it so bad when people are just don't even care anymore and are just going to go and just start doing stuff to offend you. We are going to be headed in that other direction as time goes on. Still, I've spoke too much. This is Odio signing out.